IT experts have sought to stress that the recent global internet blackout didn't highly impact South African-based chief information officers. Capitec was one of the domestic entities reported to have experienced disruptions to its banking system, but services were restored before the end of business on Friday amid the worldwide incident that is said to have involved a key technology service provider, CrowdStrike. Telecoms and Telecoms analyst Spiwe Chireka joins us now for this discussion. Thank you so much for your time, Spiwe. As you can tell there, I'm trying to gather my wording around this quite technology inclined type of glitch, if we are to even call it that, because the vocabulary really on a global scale for a South African public does not necessarily exist. We have not seen this before. So what do we call it at this stage?
Well, you're actually right. We could call it a glitch. Actually, it was a glitch in a software update that actually caused all of this. So we can call it exactly that. Just a small malfunction, actually, in the software that they were deploying to try and roll out some upgrades onto the system, which does exactly what they ended up doing, like it's supposed to protect against what ended up happening. And that malfunctioned and then caused this massive glitch in all systems that were running on Microsoft Windows.
Has it been quantified? I mean, the likes of Microsoft themselves have spoken about what they've tallied in terms of the time span that they lost doing business. Major airlines themselves are doing the same. But here in South Africa, we really haven't heard much from the likes of Capitec with regards to how they were in fact impacted rather on a monetary scale.
Of course, I mean, things like that, we may have to wait just a couple of more days to really get a clear view of the degree of impact from a monetary basis. However, I mean, it's pretty clear that we're not talking small numbers here, because as you can see, the impact was quite extensive, because I know for Capitec it was like both the consumer and the business platforms were impacted for several hours. And I mean, kudos to them for getting it back up as fast as they did. But again, the impact is definitely there from these outages.
It's absolutely a lesson learned, and one of many we think of and reference the likes of the TransUnion glitch, but at the same time, it bordered and really went into the terrain of cybersecurity. And when this particular incident occurred, initially the world thought it was cybersecurity related. What's to be taken out as a lesson here?
Right. And I'm glad that you've brought up the notion of cybersecurity, because we tend to think cybersecurity only relates to some kind of malicious attack from external entities that are trying to disrupt things. But you do know that attacks can be unintentional, right? And I won't call this an attack per se, but I'll say disruptions can be unintentional, like what happened with this software update. So actually, cybersecurity also covers incidences such as what happened with CrowdStrike. And on the one hand, I mean, when we look at it, there is what we call the good practices, right, around cybersecurity that would otherwise have either mitigated or minimalized the impact of what happened. And it goes both ways, both from the sides of the likes of Capitec and enterprises using CrowdStrike, but also from CrowdStrike themselves. So this is very much a cybersecurity issue, whereby systems are protected. Systems have built in the resilience to handle any kind of disruptions similar to what has happened here. So I'm glad that you brought it up, because yes, you're right. A lot of us tend to think, well, but this has nothing to do with cybersecurity, when it very much actually does.
And that security really speaks to the heart of how we as consumers are protected. I'm already thinking about the panic that would have been with Capitec clients. And it leads me to my last question to ask about to what extent the globe in the cyber world is taking that protection seriously. Having referenced that TransUnion leak that and the cyber attack that they experienced, it exposed a lot of South African consumers and their information just being leaked out to God knows where.
You're very right. So, and you know, what's happened with CrowdStrike and Microsoft, again, brings emphasis on the cruciality, if I can use that word, of cybersecurity, right? On the one hand, as you've rightly said, we've got the malicious attacks that have happened, as you've cited, right, from external forces finding a weakness or a vulnerability that allows them to attack a system and cause the chaos that they did. But in this case as well, it's really exposed, first of all, that there are several IT practices that need to be either embedded in how any IT dealer or any IT operator approaches their technology, but also it's now cascading all the way up to policymakers. That you've got to start putting in checks and balances that actually forces the companies to make sure that that is in place, right? And some of it is really boils down to just best practices, like, you do staggered rollouts, not one big, massive rollout at the same time, for example, or on the part of a bank or an airline, you don't allow like auto updates on critical software because, things like this could also happen. However, when it comes, and with that, and in addition, actually, cybersecurity, as you can see, has become very critical, especially as we are moving into the areas of AI. Because on the one hand, one software glitch could cause such massive disruption. And what about if now there's a whole massive components of software, which AI typically is, that will then be also causing outages. So on the one hand, I'm glad actually that this has happened, because now the discussions that we're having with clients, the discussions that are happening in boardrooms is that, well, what can we take from here? And how do we start to really push cybersecurity as being the number one enabler for all our AI and other tech plans for any company.
Thank you so much for your insights. Telecoms analyst Spiwe Chireka there speaking to us about the impact of the recent global internet blackout that the world experienced.